Hello, let's walk through, this is question 8 from exercise 5a, looking at a translation of a cost graph. Let's have a look firstly at the original cost graph to see what we're working with. Okay, here we go. So let's have a look at some of the features. There we go, we've got that maximum there at 0, at 2 pi. These intersections here at half pi, pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, negative pi over 2, negative 3 pi over 2. So let's try and see what's happened to the graph. This point has moved across by 2 pi over 3 radians to there. So we've got a translation, it's moved across, and that's moved from there. So how do we describe this? Well, we can say it's translated by 2 pi over 3 radians. What we've got to do is we've got to identify where does it meet the axes. Well, let's have a look. Now, this point here, first of all, let me have a look. This point here, this point was here. So this has moved across there. That's pi over 2. We know that's moved across by 2 pi over 3. Okay, so I'm going to try and first work out what this point is. This point here is this point I'm marking there, moved across 2 pi over 3. So in order to find that, I consider I've got pi over 2, and I'm adding 2 pi over 3. So that's 3 pi over 6 plus 4 pi over 6. So it's 7 pi over 6. So here is 7 pi over 6. Let's write that a bit more clearly. I think red might help here. 7 pi over 6. Well, what about this one? This one and this one? Well, we can look at those points and we know the graph hasn't stretched at all. So the distance between where it goes through the x-axis is always pi. So I know that is pi over 6 minus 5 pi over 6 minus 11 pi over 6. You've got a whole pi between them, so you just take away pi, or 6 pi over 6. So finally, you just need to get that point. Where does it meet the y-axis? Well, we need to consider the equation y equals cos of 0 minus 2 pi over 3. So that will give you your y coordinate. You can put in cos of minus 2 pi over 3. Okay, so cos of negative 2 pi over 3 would give me negative a half. So actually, although it doesn't really look like it, that's negative a half. Not the best diagram there. So we've got our points. We've got where it hits the x-axis, where it hits the y-axis. So let's just review that, go through the answers more clearly. Okay, let's review where it goes through the axes. There we go, we've got 4 points where it goes through the x-axis. We think back to cos x, they've all moved across by 2 pi over 3. So we're starting left to right. We've got negative 11 pi over 6, 0. Then we've got negative 5 pi over 6, 0. Remember, we just find 1, and we know they're all pi apart. We've got here pi over 6, 0, and we've got 7 pi over 6, 0. All of them pi apart. And then, although it doesn't look like it on that awful diagram, we've got 0, negative a half. Hope that's clear. Thank you very much.